Happy Monday and welcome to Your Mindset Motivation with Cecilia Hendricks. If you are new or returning, welcome. I'm very happy to have you here. I set up these Monday podcast episodes to start the week off on kind of the right foot. So I know for me that I really like taking a look at Mondays as kind of a fresh start. I want to make sure my mind is in the right place. I want to make sure that my focus is in the right place and that I am setting myself up for success within my week. And I know a lot of my success is going to come from where my mindset is and the type of focus I have, the routines that I'm holding, the habits that I have. And that's really going to create either a week that is in alignment with the type of life that I want to lead, the type of behaviors that I want to have, or it honestly could be in complete and direct opposition of the type of life that I want to have. Which is why today we're going to be discussing where you're dwelling. And essentially that's where you're placing your focus. So when you are looking to make changes or improve your life, the thing that you really need to think about is kind of where your attention is lying. So the world is essentially our perception, right? Everything that we do in life is going to come through our life filter. So any conversation that we have with somebody, any experience that we have, anything that we receive is all coming through our own personal filter. And that filter is based off of the life experiences that we've had, the experiences we've had maybe with that person that we're interacting with, the feeling that we have that day, like how did we start our day? How are we feeling overall? And kind of this filter then takes in everything that's going on to us and makes a decision on where it wants to focus and the way it wants to focus, because our brain is designed to really hone in on what you tell it to focus on. So when you look at it from that way, you're telling your brain where to focus based on your own perceptions, feelings, and beliefs. And when you continue to have a thought, eventually that thought becomes a belief. So you start to solidify it within your own mind. And then you start to get the biases that come to you to confirm what it is that you believe. So let's say that it's that you're saying something positive to yourself, that you are very loved and desired, and you start to see this within your life from different people. It starts to flow into you. Well, that's because you're setting up your brain to start to recognize those type of opportunities coming to you. But if it's the opposite and you're like, well, I want to be loved and desired, but I don't feel that way. I'm not conscious of being that. Instead, I see myself as someone that people don't really want to be around, and I don't know how to fix this. And I'm kind of always looking for a way to improve this and a new teacher to tell me how to do X, Y, Z to have the kind of life that I want. Then the issue becomes you're getting the confirmation bias within your life that that's what's happening and that people don't want to be around you and nobody really likes you. And it's just because you are designed to pay attention to only specific things. Our brains have to filter out stuff. There's too much going on around us in the world for us to be able to focus without filtering some of this stuff out. And so that goes back to the studies that they've done where people will either self-identify as lucky or self-identify as unlucky. And when they self-identify that way, they actually have different experiences even though they received the same item. So if you have not heard my episodes that I've talked about this, they did a study where essentially they wanted them to count pictures in a newspaper. And everybody received the same newspaper to count the pictures, and on the front of it, it said in rather bold letters exactly how many pictures were in the newspaper. And the people that self-identified as unlucky completely missed that sentence. So they went through and counted by hand. But the people who identified as lucky actually noticed the sentence almost immediately. So you are always filtering things out with your own perception. And that's why we are kind of taught and told in the mindset community, law of attraction, law of assumption community, to really start to focus the way that you are paying attention. Learn how to direct your dwelling place and not in a forceful manner. Because remember, we don't want to fall into the cycle of toxic positivity. That's why when you're here and when you're listening to anything that I teach and that I share, it's learning how to change your daily habits to be more aligned with the person that you want to be. And you're changing these daily habits so that you are naturally increasing gratitude. You're naturally doing more for yourself to show yourself love and care, because then that will be reflected back at you. So everything that happens to you is a reflection of your current perceptions, beliefs, and the thoughts that you continue to have. And you can challenge or question those thoughts. If something comes up, and it's not to say it's not going to, right? Part of this is not to learn how to never again have a quote unquote negative thought or a thought in opposition of what it is that you want, but it's really learning how to better handle those, how to have an increased emotional intelligence so that you can manage the emotions that come up and really start to question your thoughts. Get very curious about, why am I thinking that? What is the state or the identity that I'm coming from that would create this thought? Like if you're out and you're like, oh my gosh, those people must not want to hang out with me. Well, why do I feel that way? What internally is going on with me that I would have that kind of thought? And do I actually believe it? And do I want to believe it? Because you can make a choice, right? It's my own mind. It's my own thoughts. I can say, I choose not to believe that of true of myself. I see myself differently, even if I feel like the reflection that I'm getting right now is in opposition of how I want to feel. Well, then I need to focus on myself and bring it back to my thoughts, my beliefs, what perceptions I'm carrying, and really learn how to only focus on me and stop messing with trying to change or control everything that's going on around me. One of the things that you start to awaken to as you're kind of on this journey is that you're okay. Like in this moment, everything is wonderful. Everything is beautiful. Everything is great. And the more that you can focus on this present moment and really ground yourself in this feeling of, I'm good internally. Everything inside me is wonderful right now. I don't have to have XYZ in order to have happiness, because there is truly no external thing that's going to create the happiness for you. So that doesn't come first. And I think that's something important for folks to remember too, is that when you're starting to dwell on these thoughts, it's not in order to get something, it's so that you can feel something now. And all of these feelings are already within you. You don't have to wait for this external thing to happen. And don't get me wrong, there's beautiful life experiences that you get to have because of the external things. And I'm not taking away from that. And I'm not saying, oh, you should only feel it internally and, never have anything external happen to you. That's not how I live my life. I'm sure that there are others out there that do, but I also want to have the physical experiences of the world. I want to feel good. I want to physically have wonderful feelings that are aligned with how I feel internally. But the further that I go into this journey, the more that I realize those feelings start here first. They start with me first, and then I start to get everything flowing into me. And the external experiences are wonderful, but they don't have to be there in order for me to feel good about myself. And they don't have to be there in order for me to feel good about the life that I'm living. And it seems kind of backwards, right? Where people are like, well, wait a minute. No, I want this love in my life, or I need a better financial situation, or I need a better living situation, or I need to get this dream job, or I need to get into this dream college. And when it comes down to it, the more that you take yourself away from this, I need these things in order to feel good, and instead I'm going to focus on myself feeling good, the more that starts to come in. Because if I start to think about a dream job, it's great, it's wonderful, but if there was something else that came up that gave me the feeling that I was seeking, I would be fine with that too. Because when it comes down to it, all of these external things that you're looking for and that you want and that you're striving for and desiring, as wonderful as it is, you should lean into your desires, absolutely. But those are so you can have a feeling. You're not looking to have that thing just to have it. You want the feeling that comes along with it. So if you think about a love, right? You want a certain person and you're very upset that you don't have them in your life. What is it that you're actually looking for? It's a feeling that that would bring for them to be within your life. It's not that you're looking for them just to be there. You want the feeling that that would create for you. So again, this comes full circle to paying attention to where you're dwelling now and the kind of feelings that you're generating now. And if your feelings are constantly a cycle of wanting and yearning and desiring and not having, well, that's what your perception is. And that's what you're going to focus on. And you're going to kind of continue on this hamster wheel of frustration. And instead, what we're going to learn is how to focus right now on those feelings that we want to have. And you do that by naturally increasing gratitude and by paying attention to where you're dwelling and the feelings that you're actually generating and being really honest with yourself, which is part of the curiosity that I mentioned earlier. The more curious you can get, the more honest you are with yourself. So the readings that I'm actually doing today are from Neville Goddard's Your Faith is Your Fortune and Emmet Fox 7-Day Mental Diet. So I'm going to start with the 7-Day Mental Diet, and I'm reading kind of a piece out of there where he is talking about your consciousness and the purpose of a mental diet and why it's so important. Please be very clear about this. If you change your mind, your conditions must change too. We are transformed by the renewing of our minds. So now you will see that your mental diet is really the most important thing in your whole life. This may be called the great cosmic law, and its truth is seen to be perfectly obvious when once it is clearly stated in this way. In fact, I do not know of any thoughtful person who denies its essential truth. The practical difficulty in applying it, however, arises from the fact that our thoughts are so close to us that it is difficult, without a little practice, to stand back, as it were, and look at them objectively. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment, and I want to point out that he talks about the fact that no thoughtful person denies its essential truth. And even though this was printed many years ago from Emmet Fox, the 7-Day Mental Diet PDF, even though it was printed many years ago, if you look at a lot of successful modern day folks, they're still talking about how they use their mindset. They're still talking even openly about manifestation and the way that they bring this into their lives. And so it is actually still true to this day that there are so many thoughtful people who really do apply this, and they consider this a big part of their own personal success. I know even for myself, the more that I have started doing this type of content, the more that I've had people that I honestly have been a little surprised have come up to me to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear you talking openly about this. This is how I apply it in my life. This is the way that it's been working for me. And so it's really cool to see just how many folks truly do apply these truths to their lives in the way that they're dwelling, in the way that they're using their own mindset to make sure that they're focused on the right things. And he says also that it is a little difficult at first, but the more that you start to look at your thoughts objectively, really kind of remove yourself and make the decision that my thought is not me. There is a big difference between one random thought that you have that you kind of let float on by and you get a little curious about, oh, where'd that come from? Versus deciding to really dwell on something and return to it repeatedly. Because the more that you return to it, the more then that you're solidifying that as a belief. And that's why you want to start paying attention to the thoughts that you're having, getting curious about those thoughts, and really leaning into the type of changes that you want to make and paying attention to the things that you're doing now. So now I'm going to go back to the lecture. Yet that is what you must learn to do. You must train yourself to choose the subject of your thinking at any given time, and also to choose the emotional tone, or what we call the mood that colors it. Yes, you can choose your moods. Indeed, if you could not, you would have no real control over your life at all. Moods entertained produce the characteristic disposition of the person concerned, and it is his disposition that finally makes or mars a person's happiness. In short, if you want to make your life happy and worthwhile, which is what God wishes you to make it, you must begin immediately to train yourself in the habit of thought selection and thought control. This will be exceedingly difficult for the first few days, but if you keep going, you will find that it will become rapidly more easier. And it is actually the most interesting experiment that you could possibly make. In fact, this thought control is the most thrillingly interesting hobby that anyone could take up. You will be amazed at the interesting things that you will learn about yourself, and you will get results almost from the beginning. Now, many people, knowing this truth, make sporadic efforts from time to time to control their thoughts. But the thought stream being so close, as I have pointed out, and the impacts from outside so constant and varied, they do not make very much progress. That is not the way to work. Your only chance is to definitely form a new habit of thought, which will carry you through when you are preoccupied or off your guard, as well as when you're consciously attending to the business. This new thought habit must be definitely acquired, and the foundation of it can be laid within a few days, and the way to do it is this. Make up your mind to devote 1 week solely to the task of building a new habit of thought. And during the week, let everything else in life be as unimportant as compared to that. If you will do so, then that week will be the most significant week in your whole life. It will literally be the turning point for you. If you will do it so, it is safe to say that your whole life will change for the better. In fact, nothing can possibly remain the same. This does not simply mean that you will be able to face your present difficulties in a better spirit. It means that your difficulties will go. This is the scientific way to alter your life. And being in accordance with the great law, it cannot fail. Now do you realize that by working in this way, you do not have to change conditions? What happens is that you apply the law, and then the conditions change. You cannot change conditions directly. You have often tried to do so and failed, but go on the 7-day mental diet and the conditions must change for you. Here is your prescription. For 7 days, you must not allow yourself to dwell for a single moment on any kind of negative thought. You must watch yourself for a whole week as a cat watches a mouse, and you must not allow, under any pretense, your mind to dwell on any thought that is not positive, constructive, optimistic, and kind. This discipline will be so strenuous that you could not maintain it consciously for more than a week, but I do not ask you to do so. A week will be enough because by that time the habit of positive thinking will begin to be established. Some extraordinary changes for the better will have come into your life, encouraging you enormously, and then the future will take care of itself. The new way of life will be so attractive and so much easier than the old way that you will find your mentality aligning itself almost automatically, but the 7 days are going to be strenuous. I would not have you enter upon this without counting the cost. Mere physical fasting would be child's play in comparison, even if you have a very good appetite. So I want to talk about this a little bit because this is pretty dramatic, and he's saying that you cannot dwell on any negative thought. And I like to look at this a little bit different. So I don't like to look at any kind of thought as like negative or positive. Instead, I start to look at my thoughts as either aligned to this life, the desired outcome that I want, or in opposition. So instead of really kind of beating myself up, because when I first started this, I struggled a lot with beating myself up, right? I'm not having the right thoughts. I'm like frustrated. My beliefs are all over the place. I can't stick to this mental diet. I can't like keep my mind to dwell where I want to dwell. And I think it's because I was shaming myself into thinking, well, I just keep having negative thoughts. I keep having these negative thoughts. So instead I started saying, well, is it an alignment or no? And that's why I go back to my questions. How do I want to feel when I go to bed at night? Is this activity in alignment with how I want to feel when I go to bed? And if the answer is no, okay, well then I need to change the activity that I have. I need to start forming a new habit that is in alignment, and that can be either a physical or a mental habit. And essentially, the more that I did that, the more that I was able to gently redirect my thoughts. And that's why I also started adding my daily list of joys. If you're new here, I say write out a list of things that you enjoy doing. They can be very small, drinking a cup of coffee, taking a walk outside, putting on lotion, painting your nails, baking, cooking, whatever it is, it's up to you. But you do this big list, and then you start to consciously decide what of these joys, not only are you going to put in your life, but that you're going to pay attention to. So when I'm drinking that first cup of coffee, I'm going to take a moment, even if it's only 30 seconds, and pay attention to how it feels when I'm having that cup of coffee. How do I mentally feel when I am adding joys to my day and I'm doing something for me to provide me with this kind of happiness in my life? And that starts to naturally improve gratitude. And it also takes your attention away from this other habit that you're doing. So I use the example of, let's say that you want a specific person and you are finding yourself checking their Instagram constantly throughout the day. And you're like, man, I just keep going back to see if either I'm unblocked or if they're posting something that's going to upset me. And you're just kind of online stalking them, to be honest. And so that habit is not going to be aligned with you being a loved person who's in a very healthy relationship and really enjoying life. It's just not. I don't think that's a way that you want to live. It's creating a cycle of desperation feelings. It's creating a cycle of not being worthy. And it just kind of continues. And I'm guessing, based on some of the messages that I've gotten, some people have been in this cycle for many years with a specific person, and they just kind of keep this seeking, but nothing's really changing. But if you were to make a decision that, well, each time now that I'm going to go check their Instagram, instead, I'm going to do one of my daily joys. So I'm going to get up and even march in place for 10 minutes. I'm going to go brush my teeth. I'm going to do something that is physically removing myself. And that could mean physically removing that you're taking the app off your phone as well, right? Like, I need a cue that I am not doing this anymore. So when you go to open the app, it's not there. That triggers the cue in your mind of, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go make a different choice. And then you could do one of your daily list of joys. And then that way you are actually physically and emotionally removing yourself from this habit loop that you've created and from the dwelling place that you've been in. And that goes back to the 7-day mental diet, where you are able to start paying attention not only to your thoughts, but the habits that are coming along with those thoughts. What routines are you taking next? And it takes out kind of the shame and the feelings of like, oh, I can't dwell here, I can't dwell here, I can't dwell here. And instead, it's just leaning into being curious. Do I believe this thought? Do I want to believe this thought? What would I rather believe? How do I want to feel when I go to bed? Is this thought in alignment with that? And then just move on to something else. But have a plan for yourself to move on. Have a plan to say, okay, when this comes up for me, this is what I'm going to do. The more that you plan ahead and the more that you create a habit stack or a habit cycle that you're going to follow, when these things come up, the better you are. You're like more equipped, in other words, to take this on and to manage those feelings and those thoughts when they come up without shaming yourself or getting into like a mental battlefield in your mind. And I think the 7-day mental diet can do that to some people. I know it did for me the first few times that I did it, where I was like, this is miserable. And it's very difficult at first. But the more that I paid attention, the more that I realized I'm not staying in the position that I want. All these thoughts and beliefs that I have, the things that I keep dwelling and returning to, they're playing out in my life every single day. That's a perception that I have. That's the thing that I'm seeing. It's happening over and over. And it's really not surprising at that point, to be honest. Because if you even put a test into these type of teachings, you'll find that it plays out in your life over and over and over. And very successful, well thoughtful people also support these types of thinking and this type of belief that your mindset has so much to do with the external factors of what you get in life. So the more that you can pay attention, really lean into where you're dwelling and focus your thoughts on the things that you want that's in alignment with this outcome that you want, this desire that you want, this life that you want to lead, the better success that you'll start to have. So now I'm actually reading from Your Faith is Your Fortune. It's chapter 9, The Foundation Stone. Your Faith and Your Fortune is written by Neville Goddard, definitely one of the teachers that I love to follow. I really resonate with him. I think he makes a lot of sense, but it took a long time for me to understand what he was saying. I struggled a bit when I first started reading Neville, but I kept continuing to it. I really wanted to, and I found that by me reading him directly instead of only listening to people online was really helpful. Because if you kind of pair those, right, you hear something online that kind of resonates with you, you can go back and find a teacher, like a mystic teacher that also taught the same stuff. So if somebody online is saying, hey, this is from Neville Goddard and this is what he said, don't just take their word for it or like this is what they meant. And this goes for me too, right? Go back and actually read what he wrote and see if you read it and believe it the same way that they're teaching it. Make sure that you're going back and finding what resonates with you, because when it comes down to it, it's really all about you. It's not about their perception or what they've gotten to work for them, because it's not necessarily the techniques that really do anything. It's your belief and the assumption that you make. So here's from Your Faith is Your Fortune. Stop trying to change the world, since it is only the mirror. Man's attempt to change the world by force is as fruitless as breaking a mirror in the hope of changing his face. Leave the mirror and change your face. Leave the world alone and change your conceptions of yourself. The reflection then will be satisfactory. Regardless of your problem, its duration, or its magnitude, careful attention to these instructions will in an amazingly short time eliminate even the memory of the problem. Ask yourself this question: how would I feel if I were free? The very moment you sincerely ask this question, the answer comes. No man can tell another the satisfaction of his desire fulfilled. It remains for each within himself to experience the feeling and joy of this automatic change of consciousness. The feeling or thrill that comes to one in response to his self-questioning is the father state consciousness, or foundation stone upon which the conscious change is built. Just how this feeling will embody itself no one knows, but it will. The father, consciousness, has ways that no man knows. It is the unalterable law. All things express their nature. As you wear a feeling, it becomes your nature. It might take a moment or a year. It is entirely dependent upon the degree of conviction. As doubts vanish and you can feel, I am this, you begin to develop the fruit or the nature of the thing you are feeling yourself to be. When a person buys a new hat or pair of shoes, he thinks everyone knows that they are new. He feels unnatural with his newly acquired apparel until it becomes a part of him. The same applies to wearing of the new states of consciousness. When you ask yourself, how would I feel if my desire were at this moment realized? The automatic reply, until it is properly conditioned by time and use, is actually disturbing. The period of adjustment to realize this potential of consciousness is comparable to the newness of wearing new apparel. So what Neville is saying here is that it's normal to feel unnatural at first when you're making a change, but that you're going to want to make the change internally first. And this actually is how it ties back into the 7-day mental diet. You start to pay attention to where you're actually dwelling, what you're focusing on. And when you think of a problem or something that's not going the way that you want it to in life, if you were to ask yourself, how would it feel if right now this was resolved? If right now this was absolutely perfect, ideal for me, and I had this desired outcome, I was the person that I want to be, I was living the life that I want to live, this issue was resolved, how would it feel? And that answer should come to you pretty quickly. And I have found this in my own life. The more that I relax into just asking myself, I kind of quickly have just a thought of, well, it would feel like this. This is what would happen. This is how I would feel if this was resolved. And a lot of time it's relief, contentment, calm, relaxed, thankful. There's kind of these feelings that come up, and it's not necessarily that I have the word of the feeling that comes up, but the feeling itself. And the more that you can learn how to focus there, not worry about the control that you see externally, not trying to change a specific person's behavior, just looking at how you reflect internally. What are the inner conversations that you have about it? What are the thoughts that you continue to dwell on it? Then you'll start to see changes extremely quickly in your life, the more that you can pair these teachings together and start to really pay attention to where you dwell. So what I encourage for this week is that you definitely listen to this episode and then make sure that you go back through for this week and pay attention to your thoughts. And remember, do it in a way that you are not struggling with yourself, that you are not putting yourself down, that you're not creating a mental battlefield, because that is not necessarily what we want to do at all. If you have kind of questions on this, I actually have a playlist on my YouTube that is about like the mental diet, and I have a video on how to kind of break your thought patterns if you're finding yourself in a cycle. So there's actually some steps that you can take to make sure that you don't kind of continue on this like mental battlefield cycle of thoughts and get yourself back on track. And it's a lot of, making a plan, physically removing yourself, doing that kind of stuff. And that's been proven to really help kind of break up your mind. The more that I can physically remove myself from something, either go for a walk, go do something else, my daily list of joys, a few jumping jacks, and have a plan of what I'm going to do, the better success that I have. So I hope this starts your week off absolutely beautiful and amazing. Don't forget that I am doing a book giveaway. I'll have the link down below. You can click and sign up and it'll give you all the details. It is open to U.S. residents above the age of 18. So make sure that you fall into that if you go ahead and put in for the giveaway. But I am closing that giveaway this Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time. So that's on December 20th, 2023. So make sure that you put in. I would love to see you win. It's some of my favorite books and a book light, and I'm really excited about it just in time for the holidays. And I hope you have an absolutely beautiful week. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode and got benefit out of it, please share it out with somebody else that you think would get benefit from it as well. I would greatly appreciate it. And it's like one of the biggest compliments that you can actually give me is by sharing this out with your network. I hope that you have a beautiful week, and I will see you soon.